Tav Pei Dalet Amud Beis will begin Pei Dalet Amud Aleph, the last line. Masav Rav Eloi. We learned previously that a kli cheres, medrash kli cheres, is tor. That a kli cheres, an earthenware vessel, the medrash is tor. It does not makabel tumas medrash. If a zov rests on it, sits on it, lies on it, it's not makabel the tumas medrash. What's the makor? We learned one makor. Chizkiah says, the pasuk says, "Isha sheyiga b'mishka voy." So there's a hekesh between the zav and what he lies on. Just like the zav, he's a person that has tara b'mikvah. So too, to makabel tumas medrash, it has to be something that has tara b'mikvah. And the kli cheres doesn't have tara b'mikvah. The kli cheres becomes tomei. The only way to remove the tumah is to break it. You can't be toivel it in the mikveh to remove the tumah. So therefore, it's not the type of item that is hukish to a zav. It's not makabel tumas medrash. Direct to Gemara, Masiv Rav Eloi, mapes b'meis minayin. How do we know a mapes? It's a mat. It's a mat made out of reeds. Reeds have a din of kli eitz. The din is, halach is that pshute kli eitz are not makabel tumas maga. So the question is, mapes b'meis minayin. How do we know that we have the mapes b'meis has a tumas maga? Now, mapes b'meis is normally, it's a pshute kli eitz, is not makabel tuma. It's not makabel tumas maga, but a mapes is something that's roy to lie down. It's roy a lie on. It's roy lemishkav. So, since it has tuma of a mishkav and has the tuma of a medrash, now we're learning out that even though it's pshute kli eitz, it has tumas maga. Notwithstanding that pshute kli eitz, which normally does not have tumas maga, but this is something which is a royal mishkav, a meishav, that it is makabel tumas maga. So v'dinhu, we learn out of kavachayim. Umma pachim kitanim shetarim bezav. Pachim kitanim, very small, tiny earthenware vessels, are taharim bezav, are not makabel tumah from a zav. Why is that? Because they themselves are not made liyeshiva. So it's not makabel tumas medrash, because they're not made to sit on. And we apply the principle of something which is, you say, amoid v'nasa malachtenu, it's not makabel tumas medrash. So it's taharim bezav. It's not makabel tumas maga, because kli cheres, these are pachim ketanim, which are made out of kli cheres. Kli cheres is only makabel tumah from the interior, not from the exterior. And these are so small that the zav can't even put his tiny finger inside of it. So it's not makabel tumas maga either. And as Rashi explains, it's not makabel tumas hesed, because something which is not makabel tumas maga, there's no hesed. Now, even though theoretically he can insert a hair inside, but nevertheless, if his basar is not matama, and he can't put even his little finger inside, so the basar is not matama, therefore the seyar also would not be matama, because the seyar is only matama as part and parcel of being the basar. If the basar is not matama, the seyar is not matama either. So v'dinu, ma pachim kitam shetarim b'zav, as we mentioned, the zav cannot be matama, the pachim kitanim, tamei and b'meis, but if it's an oil of meis, it's makabel tuma. Pachim kitanim, even an oil, it's part of the oil, it's makabel tuma. So it's makabel, it's tamei and b'meis, mapes shetama b'zav, a mapes which is made liyeshiva. It's made for lying down, so it is makabel tuma v'zav. Ein adin shei tama b'meis. So kal v'chayim should be makabel tumas meis. So therefore, we see this principle that even though something which is pshute kli eitz, which is normally not makabel tumas maga, it's not makabel tuma for comes into contact with a meis or with a sheretz. However, if it's something that is makabel tumas medrash, like a mapes, it is makabel tumas maga. So what's the kasha? V'amai halesle tahara b'mikveh. Why should we, according to your principle? So he asks he's asking on Chanina's principle, according to the principle that we learn out that something is only something that is doimet to the zav, that has tara b'mikvah is mekabel tumas medres. Something which is not doimet to the zav is not mekabel tumas medres. So therefore, over here, the pshute, the mapets, is pshute kliates. Pshute kliates are not makabel. Pshute kliates, there's no tara b'mikvah. So if you're telling me that we're connecting the two, that it's only something that is tara b'mikvah, and something which is not, and therefore you're saying a kli cheres is not mekabel tumas medres, well, a pshute kliates also has no tara b'mikvah. In the parashas of the mikvah, when we have the Torah tells us about being matar kelim in a mikvah. In one pasuk it says it in the context with a sak, and a sak has a base kibble. So pshute kliates, which does not have a base kibble, will not be mekabel tuma. And in the other pasuk, it doesn't list eitz at all. So we have no makor that a pshute kliates has tara b'mikvah. So therefore, pshute kliates has no tara b'mikvah. According to your principle, according to the principle that we connect it's a hekesh, the mishkav aloi, and we're saying just like the mishkav, just like the zav has to have tara b'mikvah, we're talking about a person that he has visha sheyiga b'mishkavai, just like he is someone that is tara b'mikvah. The mishkav, the mikabel tumas, and the mishkav also has to be something which has tara b'mikvah. So therefore, why over here does the mapets have tara? Why over here does the mapets have tumas medras? So he answered, Amrli Rav Chanina. Rav Chanina answered, Shiny Hasam Hoil V'ika B'minai. He answered, it's true that the mapets itself does not have tara b'mikvah, but b'minai there is tara b'mikvah if there is a kliates that has a base kibble, that is not pshute kliates, it's not flat, it has a base kibble, it has a receptacle. That type of kliates, well, that's dumi de sak, that's comparable to a sak. It has tara b'mikvah. So Rav Chanina answered, then therefore, even though it itself doesn't have tara b'mikvah, but in the general category of a kliates, there is a case of tara b'mikvah. That's sufficient. That's sufficient to satisfy this hekesh, that mishkavai loy. Amar lei, he said to him, Rachmana l'islam daita. He said, the Rebbeinu Shalom should save us from this reasoning. It seems to be flawed. So what if it's b'minai? But the item itself, if the item itself doesn't have tara b'mikvah, so then why should it be mekabel tumas medres? If you're telling me that there's a hekesh and only where somebody has tara b'mikvah, it has tumas medres, so what if theoretically a kliates that has a base kibble has a tara, but this kliates does not have tara b'mikvah? So he said, Rachmana l'islam daita. So he answered back, Adarabba, Rachmana l'islam daita didach, medaita didach. The Rebbeinu Shem save me from your reasoning. But frankly, more of a time am I. But why is that so? L'cheira, it requires an explanation. So what if b'minoi there's a tara? Why should that make a difference? But time am I. So more answers straight, because we have two psukim. One pasuk says, "V'ish asher yigav mishkavoy." One is the pasuk says, "Asher yishgav mishkavoy," which is, as we learned, which is the drasha that he made that were makish the mishkavoy loy, mishkavoy to his mishkav. So it means something where, just like the zav has tara b'mikvah, to be mekabel tumas medres, it has to be something which has tara b'mikvah. But uksiv, another pasuk says, "V'chol hamishkav asher yishkav alav hazav." It doesn't say his mishkav. It says asher yishkav hazav, where it's not makish the zav to the mishkav. So it says, "Kol mishkav yishkav alav hazav yitzvah," and it doesn't say mishkavoy haketza. So how do we reconcile the two? Are we makish the mishkav to him? Are we not makish it? Okay, so we resolve it as follows. Yesh b'minai, if it is in the minai, in the general category, afagav d'leslei, tara b'mikvah, afagav d'leslei, tara b'mikvah. If it's b'minai, so and mapets, kli eitz, b'mina in the general category. If there is a base kibble, there's a tara b'mikvah, avagav deles lei tara b'mikvah. Even though the mapets itself, the mat itself, does not have tara b'mikvah, it's still mekabel tumas medras because yesh b'mina. Ein b'mina, but if it's not in the category at all, makish, there we say makish mishkav aloi. So a kli cheres, which has in the min of a kli cheres, there's no category of a kli cheres that has tara b'mikvah. So over there, ein b'minoi, we make the hakish and we say, well, if it's something that doesn't have tara b'mikvah, it's not makabel tumas matters. But he says, where it's a kliyetz, where in b'minoi, where in the general category there is tara b'mikvah, there we say that is makabel tumas matters, even if the item itself does not have tara b'mikvah, like a mapets. And there we apply the pasuk, v'chol mishkav asher yishkav alav azov, and it doesn't say mishkav vay. That's how we reconcile it. Rava says he has an entirely different makor, an entirely different source as to why we say what the source is that a kli cheres does not have tumas medras. And it's nothing to do with the hakish of the mishkav to the zov, and it's not dependent on tara b'mikvah, and therefore there's no kasha from mapets, because it's not dependent on tara b'mikvah. It's a different source entirely. Rav Amar Midras Kli Cheres Torah Me'acha. He says it's from the following. The pasuk says, "V'chol kli pasuach asher ein tzomid pasul alav." The pasuk says that if it's in an oil mace, if there's a kli that's not covered, if it's not sealed with a covering, then it's tomei. So if you have a kli pasuach, an open kli that's not sealed, it's makabel tuma from the tumas hamez, from the oil hamez, which implies hayesh somid pasul avtor, which implies that if it's sealed, it's tor, even if it happens to be in the oil of mace. It happens to be under the same roof of a mace, but if it's sealed, then it's tor. So we're talking about a kli cheres, that if it's sealed, it's tor. The kli cheres is only makabel tuma from the interior, not from the exterior. And if this is covered and it's sealed, so therefore it protects the kli cheres. It's not makabel tuma because the interior is sealed. Now the principle is that for something to be a chatzitza, to be a separation, it has to be something where it itself is not tomei. If it itself is tomei, it cannot be a chatzitza, it cannot block the tumah. So if we're saying that this kli cheres which is sealed, this vessel which is sealed, protects it and it protects the interior, it must be that the lid, that the seal itself is not tomei. Well, why is the seal not tomei? So we say, if there is a seal, it's tor. Now, well, perhaps this was designated for ishtanida, to sit on. And we're not differentiating between the kli pasua, the asher ein samid pasul. So perhaps the person, the husband, designated this to be used as a chair for his wife while she was a nida. Now, if there is tumas medras by a kli cheres, then this lid would be tomei. If the lid is tomei, it cannot block the tumah, it cannot be a chatzitza, and it cannot be a covering and a seal for the interior to block the tumah. If you were saying that there is a covering and it's a seal and it blocks the tumah, it must be that that item itself is not tomei. Now, if it is able to be mekabel tumas medras, then it itself will become tomei, and it would not be able to block the tumah from the tumas mace. It would not be a chatzitza. It must be talking about the item itself, cannot be tomei. It must be a dover that's tor. If it's susceptible to tumas medras, then perhaps this is an item that the person, the husband, designated for ishtanida. It would be tomei, it can't be a chatzitza. Elamai must show you that there's no tumas medras. And so therefore the item itself, the exterior, is tor. Now, as we said, a kli cheres is only mekabel tuma from the interior, not from the exterior, so there's no tumas maga either. There's no tumas maga, there's no tumas medras, because it must be that a kli cheres is not mekabel tumas medras. And as we said earlier, there's no tumas hesed either, because there's no tumas maga, and over here it's a kli that it's a kli it has a tzomit posel, it's a kli cheres with a tzomit posel, so there's no maga, because it only comes from the interior. There's no hesed, because where there's no maga, there's no hesed. Since the Torah describes hesed in terms of touching of maga, the two are connected. So therefore, that's why the sealed kli cheres, there's no tumas meis, because the tumah cheres, kli cheres on mekabel tumah from the interior. And the kli cheres exterior must be tor, the kli cheres must be tor, because the maga is only from the interior. And there must be that there's no tumas medras, there's no tumas hesed either. So you see over here, we see a rai over here that a kli cheres, and therefore there's no difference if it is tara b'mikvah or not tara b'mikvah. A kli cheres is not mekabel tumas medras.